Okay, so this video has been a year and a half of me trying to muster up the courage to make it, and I feel like I'm finally mentally in a very good place. I am emotionally in a very good place to be able to talk about this subject, and today I'm going to be telling you guys my ectopic story. It was July 5th. Andrew and I found out that we were expecting, and we were absolutely positively so excited that we were going to have a baby because we had been trying to have a baby for a year and a half. We found out on a freak accident, and I ended up having an anxiety attack. I started hyperventilating, and they ended up taking me to the hospital. They were telling me, it's just an anxiety attack. We'll go ahead and we'll run the normal tests on you, but we think that you'll be fine. They came back with all my tests, and they had to take my blood like 5 or 6 different times. They finally got all the tests back. They were like, okay, well, this came back normal and this came back normal, and they asked me, is there a chance that you could be pregnant? And I said, no. And she had informed me, she goes, well, you're pregnant. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so excited. And Andrew came back, and I was like, babe, I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. And he's like, what? I was like, we're pregnant, we're gonna have a baby. And so they went ahead and did an ultrasound, and they didn't see the baby. They checked my uterus, and they were like, okay, well, maybe you're just super early on and we can't tell that you're pregnant. They're like, but your HCG levels are pretty high for you being pregnant this early, and didn't think anything about it. And they said to go ahead and schedule an appointment here within the next few weeks. So we get home, and everything's going fine. I call and make an appointment with an OB, and they can't get me in until December 4th. On July 24th, I had some crampy pains throughout the week, but I talked to my sister, and she was reassuring me. She's like, you're gonna get cramps because your uterus is stretching, and you're gonna get pains that you've never had before. So I let it slide, thinking that was what it was. The next morning, I wasn't in a lot of pain, but the pain just didn't feel right to me. It wasn't something that I felt was okay. And so I called my sister again, and my anxiety kicked in because I'm worrying about the baby and I don't know what's going on. She was like, that doesn't sound right for the amount of pain that you say that you're in. She'd also mentioned an ectopic pregnancy. She goes, that could be what it is, and it kind of sounds similar. She goes, but don't freak out about it. I know you have bad anxiety. Don't freak out about it. Just call the OB. So I called the OB, and I told them what was going on. I told them I was very uncomfortable, and I felt like something wasn't right. So they told me, they're like, okay, we'll just go ahead and go into the emergency room and let them know what's going on, and we'll get you checked out. So I went in to the emergency room, and they finally got us checked in, and the doctor came in and was pressing on my stomach, and they did chest x-rays and took blood and all this stuff, and they finally took me back for my ultrasound. And when they took me back for my ultrasound, I was able to hear our baby's heartbeat for the first time, and so I started to tear up, and I was like, oh my goodness, the baby's okay, we don't have to worry. And that's what I thought in my head. I don't know why the nurse showed me the baby's heartbeat. And I remember telling Andrew, I was like, babe, I heard the baby's heartbeat, the baby's okay, I think that, they're just gonna send us home, and I might have overreacted on this. And it took an hour to 2 hours for the doctors to come back. And when they did come back, one doctor came back and was like, okay, well, we're going to bring in a few doctors and a few nurses. So me and Andrew are kind of looking at each other, and they brought in 2 nurses plus the doctor and an OB doctor, and they were, sitting there, and the lady was like, and the OB doctor, she was like, okay, well, this is what's going on. She said ectopic pregnancy, but I had never looked it up. I didn't know what it meant. And I was thinking, oh, well, the baby's in the wrong place, we can just move it. She told me what was going on, and I was like, okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and move the baby into my uterus and everything will be okay, right? And she sat me down, and she was like, no, sweetie, we're going to have to terminate your pregnancy. And at that moment, I completely just fell apart. I was done. I started crying. I stopped listening to what the doctors were saying, and when I finally calmed down, they were like, is that okay? We're gonna go ahead and do this. And I was like, what is going on? And they're like, well, we're gonna have to do emergency surgery. I was bleeding internally, so they had to get the baby out immediately, and My fallopian tube, they didn't know that it was burst at the time, but they did see that there was some bleeding in my lower abdomen. So they prepped me for surgery, and I remember crying and telling Andrew, just holding his hand, I was like, I'm not ready for this. And first person I called was my sister. I told her, I was like, Katie, I don't know what to do. This is what's going on. And she's like, sis, you gotta stay strong. You really gotta, push through it. Everything's gonna be okay. This could be a lot worse. And kind of gave me a reality check. And then I sat there with Andrew and I was crying, and he looked at me and he's like, you know what? He goes, maybe this is meant to happen. It's okay. He's like, you're going to be okay, and that's all that matters. And when I went in to surgery, they were able to bring Andrew back with me when I talked to my anesthesiologist, and then he had to leave. They wheeled me back into the operating room, and they moved me onto the operating table, and the guy was like, okay, well, you're going to feel some pressure on your throat. And I'm pretty sure I hallucinated, but they went ahead and hooked me up to the anesthesia, and he told me to count back from 10. I was like, okay, 10, 9, boom, and I was out. But right before I was out, I swear that this man pushed on my throat and was like, okay, you're okay, and just choked me. I know he didn't. I swear I was hallucinating, but the thing that I remember after that is I was dreaming. I was coming to. I remember them putting this baby in a car seat, and they were just taking the baby away from me. I started panicking, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And I started freaking out, and then I woke up in recovery. I guess I was freaking out. My nurse was like, you need to calm down, and I was finally coming to, and I kind of opened up my eyes, and I remember her telling me to eat my ice chips, and I told her that I wanted pizza, and she told me that I couldn't have pizza because the anesthesia would make me throw up if I ate something that greasy, so I ended up crying, and they finally brought Andrew back after she got me dressed, and I remember getting into the car once all the anesthesia wore off. They weren't able to save my fallopian tube, so they had to completely remove my left fallopian tube, and my right fallopian tube is still intact. I remember getting in the car, and I was wearing this t-shirt when I went into the hospital, and there are still from my incision because my incision was leaking. So I don't ever really wear this shirt anymore. It's got sentimental value to it now. And I just remember thinking myself into a spiral, and I just cried the whole way home. During my recovery process, I didn't take my pain medication because I felt in my head, I was thinking to myself, I feel like I'm not depressed. I feel like I'm not hurting. So I made myself go through the pain to make me realize what was going on and what was real and what wasn't. And I feel like that was maybe my way of dealing with it, and it wasn't a very healthy way of dealing with it because I did hit a downward spiral of depression. I pushed Andrew away. I didn't want anything to do with him. I didn't want to be around him. He couldn't comfort me. My mom couldn't comfort me, and I turned to drinking and smoking marijuana to try to make myself feel better, and I just hit this downward drinking spiral to make myself feel better, and obviously it wasn't helping. I ended up hurting myself. I hit a very low point, and I was like, oh, this isn't, I just almost felt like I was in a dream, nothing was real all the time, and so I was like, maybe if I hurt myself, I'll feel better. And I ended up cutting my wrist, and it didn't make me feel better. It gave me a scar on my arm that I don't ever want to look at anymore. But I was able to, thank God, I was able to pull myself out of this slump that I was in. And Andrew finally got through to me. He pulled me aside and looked at me and was like, you know what? I can't watch you do this to yourself. He told me, I know that you're sad. He goes, I know that this is something that we've wanted for a very long time. He goes, you're hurting yourself in this healing process. And he goes, if you continue to self-harm and, self-medicate, he's like, I can't sit back and watch you self-destruct. I'm not going to do it. He goes, so you need to pull your head out of your ass and kick it into gear, girl. He's like, because this isn't, he's like, this isn't the end for us. I told you that it wasn't our time for a baby. It wasn't meant to be right now. He goes, you're not only hurting yourself, he goes, you're hurting your family, you're hurting me, you know, you're hurting our relationship with you doing this and being as selfish as you're being. So I finally turned it around, and I had, you know, a change of heart, and I just broke down and I cried to him, and I'm not proud how I handled the situation. I am glad, however, that I was able to pull my head out of my butt, and I have Andrew to thank for that. If it wasn't for him, I don't know where or what I would be doing. I'm sure that I'd still be stuck in a downward spiral. He's got a way of really snapping my head out of things, and I'm glad that I did, because the chance of having one ectopic pregnancy is very rare. The chances of having 2 ectopic pregnancies is very, 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 very rare. So I thought in the back of my head that it wasn't going to happen again, and thank goodness that it hasn't. We've been very blessed, but we ended up conceiving Axton in October, and he was born on the day that I went in and had my surgery. It's like, I remember holding him in my arms and thinking to myself, we didn't ever lose a baby. Like, our baby came back to us, and he came back to us on the same exact day that he left us the first time. It's just crazy the way that things work, and we weren't ready for a baby. We were still growing up when this happened, and I feel so very blessed to have gone through this, and to say that I've gone through this, because it's made me stronger as a person, and it's made me realize that maybe what we want in life at the times that we want it, it's maybe then just isn't the right time for it. And Andrew was right in saying that. He told me that from the very, very beginning, right before I went into surgery, and I didn't believe him, and I thought that, you know, I was done. This is the end of me. I'm so broken, but here we are a year later, having this beautiful, beautiful baby boy. I decided to make this video because I wanted to share my experience with someone, hoping that it will help someone, because I know that videos like this have helped me. They did help me, you know, pull my head out of my butt and get myself back on the right track, seeing that I'm not the only one that this has happened to, and this affects women all over. It's very rare, but it has affected a lot of women, and it's a very tough thing to go through. And just know that if you're watching this video, whether you found it because you follow us and you want to know our story about this, or you've searched it up and you have found it by looking for stuff on this situation, just know that you are not alone, and that you are a strong person, and that you can make it through this. It's not the end. It's just not. Just remember that it's not the end. It just wasn't the right time for you, and you will have your time, and it will come back around to you. So I hope that this helps someone. If you guys enjoyed this story and you would like to see more of our lives, we are a family vlog channel. And thank you guys so much for watching.